Hey everybody, and welcome back to Social Studies in Isolation. Hopefully everybody had a nice break. Hopefully all our students had a little restful time away from their videos and from your work. We are going to move into a new topic today. This is titled The Lies That Disney Tells Us, the Story of Pocahontas. So let's get going here. So just a little bit of background on this. So we're going to be focusing on a time period when the English first came to America and how it was depicted in a 1995 cartoon movie titled Pocahontas. So I fully understand that none of my students were even alive in the 90s, but maybe you've seen the movie. If you haven't, your parents probably have. You can fly over to Disney Plus and watch it quickly if you want to, and then come back here. But we're going to talk about what the cartoon had in place and then what actually happened. So hopefully a different way to kind of learn about the first people that came to America, the first English that came to America. So first lies that we need to kind of get off the board here: the whole talking trees, the friendly animals, the fact that Pocahontas has never ever met an English person, speaks fluent English. Obviously all of those things are not real. But those are kind of Disney making a kids movie, so we'll push those off to the side and focus more on the historical events from this point forward. So let's get going. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. So the cartoon Disney version starts with a bunch of men excitingly signing up to sail to the New World as a part of what is known as the Virginia Company. So the real events of this: the Virginia Company was a company, a bunch of investors that came together in England and decided they wanted to go to the New World that was North America. And so they pooled their money, they got the charter from King James, and they set out on the adventure. In the movie, there's a boat that heads off. In reality, there were 3 boats that took off. Those 3 boats were the Susan Constant, the Godspeed, and the Discovery. Those 3 ships head off to the New World in 1607. They have 105 passengers on board. They land in Virginia. Wasn't called Virginia by the people there, but they called it Virginia, and they settled Jamestown, named after King James himself. Captain Christopher Newport was in charge of this expedition, even though in the movie they've got this Governor Radcliffe that supposedly is the guy in charge, but not really true. But they needed a villain, and this guy is the quintessential villain, so let's throw Governor Radcliffe in there. So they land on this place, and then this is going to begin our story of what takes place here. So Disney then takes us and launches us into this wonderful classic Disney tale. You have a lovely princess named Pocahontas, who we'll get back to in a second, and you have the heroic John Smith over here they're going to obviously fall in love in true Disney fashion, and that's what the basis of the story is. Let's get into these characters a little bit. So the reality: this is John Smith in the Disney movie. This is John Smith in real life. So not nearly the figure that you would think you see in the movie. But what does John Smith do? So he comes over on the expedition, and the movie depicts immediately all these people get off the boat and they start digging because they came to the New World for gold. And they think they're going to get rich and they're going to go home. John Smith, on the other hand, is going to be a little bit more of the, we don't all want to starve to death, so maybe we shouldn't all be digging for gold. So in reality, John Smith is going to take over the settlement of Jamestown. He's going to become a dictator. He has the very famous line, "He that will not work will not eat." So people need to actually settle. And so John Smith, in a lot of ways, saves the colony of Jamestown from all of the greedy gold miners who are out just trying to make a quick buck. Moving forward then, John Smith realizes he needs to create relationships with the neighboring Indians. So let's get back to the Disney version. This Disney figure here, this is Chief Powhatan. Chief Powhatan was the real name, this is who it really was. He was the leader of the local Indian tribes. Probably looked more like this than the Disney version, but that's who it was. And so John Smith attempts to put together relationships with the Powhatans many times, and they have kind of a loose relationship of trading between the two of them. Then John Smith heads off into the woods one day. He has maps and tradable goods, and he gets lost, and he is going to be captured by the Powhatans. And then this begins the journey with the famous Pocahontas here that you see in the Disney version. All right, so Disney then goes on this adventure where Pocahontas and John Smith talk together and they get to know each other. And Pocahontas leads him through the woods and explains to him how they should be kind. And it's basically this big environmental push about how the English are destroying nature and they just need to listen. And of course, you do this in song form to make it even better.
You paint with all the colors of the wind. Can you paint with all the colors of the wind?
So let's get to the reality of this. The reality is John Smith would have been 28 years old at this time, and as we said, would have looked approximately like this. Pocahontas, on the other hand, we don't know for sure because most of the Native American tales aren't documented, but we're pretty sure that Pocahontas was between 11 and 12 years old. So this becomes our first issue. 28-year-old John Smith, 11 or 12-year-old Pocahontas. Doesn't seem like they're probably going to be falling in love or that she is going to be taking him into the woods and teaching him all about nature. So what really happens? In reality, then, you would not have had these two at all. John Smith would have been just wandering through the woods on his own, and then he is captured by the Powhatans. So Disney then, let's get back to Disney. Disney depicts this big scene where John Smith is going to be executed because the English are these terrible people. They've killed one of their greatest warriors, Kocoum, who we'll get back to in a second. And so they gather up John Smith and they take him to the top of the cliff and they lay him down. And the English come in with all their guns and all their cannons and they're going to start this battle. And just as Powhatan is about to smash the head of John Smith, Pocahontas dives on top and saves his life. And this is a true love act here in place. So that's Disney. Real life version. Once again, John Smith is captured. There is a execution that is staged where he is laid down and they're going to smash in his head. And 11-year-old Pocahontas, according to John Smith, saves his life. Now, it's not possible that Pocahontas at 11 or 12-year-old saves him because she loves him. But instead, what most historians are kind of thinking is that this was all staged. It was basically the Powhatans showing John Smith, we have the power to kill you, but we're not going to do it. So now let's have a relationship here that's going to work. So Disney makes obviously a lot more out of this. Let's fast forward a little bit then. John Smith goes back to the colony of Jamestown. We have a pretty good relationship between the Powhatans and the people of Jamestown. In Disney, they show that John Smith actually jumps in front of the chief and saves him from a gunshot, and that is why John Smith has to leave. Unfortunately, not that heroic. There's actually a gunpowder burn on his leg, and so that is why John Smith has to leave. He's going to leave in 1609, and he's never going to return to the colony of Jamestown. So that's the end of John Smith. So let's move in. What happens to Pocahontas then? Like we said, she was only like 12 years old when she left. Even though John Smith makes up this story about how she saved him, what does she do? So once again, we don't know because not much is documented, but it's believed that Pocahontas, in fact, marries Kocoum, who in Disney they killed off. No, he didn't actually die from that. Pocahontas marries him, and supposedly they have a child or two together. And then Pocahontas later on is captured by the people of Jamestown. So thanks for all you did to help us. They capture her and they hold her ransom. And they think that Chief Powhatan is going to give all of this food and supplies and everything in exchange. Unfortunately, he's got like 100 kids, and so he's like, I'm not going to pay your ransom here. And so he does not pay off the ransom. What Pocahontas is going to do then is she is going to end up marrying a man named John Rolfe. This is actually depicted in Pocahontas 2, which like nobody has seen, but it is another one where John Rolfe comes in and marries her. So back to reality. Pocahontas is going to marry John Rolfe in 1614. She is eventually going to be taken to England. She is going to be baptized as a Christian and renamed Rebecca. And then she is paraded around England to show the fact that we have this wonderful English Native American relationships and to show how they can convert the natives to Christianity and everything is going to be great. And so Pocahontas kind of becomes a pawn in this entire thing. She has her and John Rolfe have a son, Thomas Rolfe, who then leads to a huge line of descendants. Down there, they are going to return back to North America, and unfortunately, Pocahontas is going to become very ill, and she is going to die either 21 or 22 of exact age before she returns to America. So a very short life, really, as a whole. Only lives to the age of 22, but really accomplishes a lot in reality, and then a lot in fiction, a lot of stories that have been made up. So that's kind of the story of the founding of Jamestown. All of these people are real. They are very important. Disney obviously takes some liberties to make up some of the story, but John Smith did in fact save Jamestown. Pocahontas did in fact create a good relationship, even though she didn't fall in love with John Smith. John Rolfe actually is the one that plants tobacco in Jamestown and makes it a prosperous community. He does marry Pocahontas, which is shown in the second movie. And then they do go to England, but Disney leaves out the part where she dies at like age 22. You know, it's Disney. Don't want to be that depressing in the whole thing. So that is a little bit about the history of the English coming to the New World, the colony of Jamestown, the Indian princess Pocahontas, and how Disney has distorted those a little bit. So have a good day. Hopefully, if you have any other kind of as seen in history movies, you can go check some of those out and think about how much of that is reality as we go forward. So that's your kind of activity that you can look into on your own time. Find some historical movies and then find out what's not actually true in them. Have a great day. Hopefully everybody stays healthy, stays safe, and we will see you next time in Social Studies in Isolation.
And you'll never hear the wolf cry to the blue corn moon for whether we are white or copper skinned. We need to sing with all the voices of the mountain. We need to paint with all the colors of the wind.